Welcome to the video for Lab 4. This is the video you should watch just before you start Lab 4. So today we're going over functions, and I'm going to go over two different types of functions, a function file and an anonymous function. So a function file is a piece of code that you can write and wrap up in its own little script. So here's an example, test. So this is a function that takes in x, x2, x3, and outputs t and y. And this is what happens inside of test. So t gets set to this, and then y is set to the square root of that. So if we try to run this script, bing, oops, it says test requires more input arguments. So if we go to the command line, you'll see this, not enough input arguments. So because this is a function, you can't run it directly because it needs input arguments. So in order to run it, we make another script here, and see the line test right here. So I'm going to set a breakpoint right here, and I'm going to hit run. And now the cursor is right here. Now this is where these other little buttons start to make sense. So step says step over that function. Step in says step into the function. Step out, if you're in the function, it steps out. And then run to cursor, you can put the cursor there and run to that. So let's look at step in. So if we do hit step in, boom, we end up inside of test. And you'll notice here we've got x, x2, x3, and those were the values that we passed in. We take two steps. We set t and we set y. And now we can hit step out, and we end up out here with our values t and y. And remember that this t and y is not the same t and y that was in test. Those are separate variables. So now we can plot. And look at our plot. There's our plot of t versus y, and so on. So that's a function file. Now the only tricky thing about function files, like I said, you can't run them. You should run them from the script. But the other thing is that you need to have the function file be in the same directory as the calling script. So here's our calling script. Here is our function file. And on top of that, test.m, if we go look at test, this has to be the same name as the file. So things that can go wrong is if you misname the file or it isn't in the same directory. If it's not in the same directory, when you go to call it, it will say, I can't find that function. The other thing that can go wrong is if I pass the wrong number of variables here. So if I tried to call test with, say, just x and x2, it will say wrong number of inputs or can't find test with that number of inputs. So in order for this to actually work, you need to have a function that is the same name as the script name in the same directory, and you have to pass it the right number of arguments. All right, so that's a function file. And all right, so how do we make test.m? So we could just make a script and put in that function stuff up here, but MATLAB has a shortcut. So if you go to File and New and you click the down arrow, you'll see function here. So if you click that, you'll automatically get a script that has the function, output, input, and untitled right here. And then if you go to save it, it will automatically, so let's say we're going to make this named function foo. When we go to save it, it will automatically tell us to name it the right thing and in the right directory. So that's how you make one of these. So that's a function file. The other way to make functions is what's called an anonymous function. So in an anonymous function, you just do it in the script, and it actually creates another variable that looks just like this. So here we go. We're going to set x to 2, y to 8. If you look, c is actually defined as a function. So it's another variable. It just happens to be a variable that takes a function. So we can call it now. So we called c with x2, y8, and our output was 131. So if we try to just plot this, so let me cut out this piece of put this part of code. So this will happen to you many, many times. You go to try to plot with fplot. So you passed it c, and you said you wanted x to go from 0 to 5, and you will get this error, not enough input arguments. So the problem here is that c actually takes two arguments. It takes a and b, but you've only told it to take one argument here. Fplot passes the function only one argument. So if we go back to our script, the right way to do this is to create a new function, takes in one variable, and it sets the second variable to 8. So now this is another function that happens to take one variable. And if we do this, then we can pass it to fplot. So C1 argument is any function that takes one argument. You can pass to fplot. You tell it where to start and where to stop plotting, and it will plot for you. And there you go. And like plot, you can say what kind of plotting you would like to do. You can also do this in one line. So you notice this calls C, but we say, okay, we want to have this variable be the one that changes. That's this one. And we're just going to do this. And y right now is 8. It's a variable that exists. I could have typed 8 in here. You could type y, any sort of thing. But it says call C with this variable changing and this one coming from here. It's called binding a variable. So if we do that, we get the exact same plot. So either of these work. You can either do this or this, doesn't really matter. This does it in place. This is why it's called an anonymous function, because we don't actually name it in here. That's it.